this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. We are here today for a climb episode, funny story, with someone that I owe this connection to Facebook. So as those of you who have been listening for a while know, I am an enneagram enthusiast. I incorporate it in all aspects of my life and work. And I had joined an enneagram group. And our guest today had posted, and we were the same number. And when I found out what she did for a living, had to jump on a call with her. And we had so much in common. And so I have been following her journey, and we're going to talk all about that today. So Laura Bates, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy to have you here. So we had tried to make a plan to get you on the show at another point in time, and you had a baby. And so I had to wait for you to come back to work and get back in the groove. So you were worth the wait.
Yeah, thank you.
So welcome. Yeah, so if you would introduce yourself to the audience, I would appreciate it. Tell us what you do and where you're located.
Okay, my name is Laura Bates. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner in North Louisiana. I currently am in private practice, opened my own practice almost 2 years ago. So we are still technically kind of in the baby stages, and there's a huge learning curve, but it has been well worth it. So
I'm so happy to hear that. And as a fellow perfectionist, I can totally relate to how we want to have everything up and running and smooth. And private practice just doesn't work that way, does it?
No.
Life just doesn't work that way. No, so we have to get better at rolling with the punches and just taking whatever life throws at us and doing the best we can with it. So tell us about your private practice journey. What led you to make that decision? It is a daunting one. So what brought you there?
Ooh, well, it's kind of going back to what you just said, rolling with the punches, whatever life throws at you. I actually, before this, I worked for a larger physician group with several clinics within it for 5 years, and that was my first job as a nurse practitioner. And I always knew that I wanted to have my own practice, but I've had a pattern in my life of kind of hanging back and staying places too long when I know in my heart it's time to move on to the next chapter. So long story short, I lost my job on a Friday. I had no money to start a business. I had no plan. I didn't know this was going to happen ahead of time. So, of course, I laid on the couch all weekend and threw a pity party. And then on Monday, I got up and I started researching, like, what's the first thing I need to do? You know, getting all my numbers together, getting a tax ID, a name of my business, that kind of thing. So, I think as an Enneagram 1, that is the best thing that could have happened to me, because I think if I would have waited until I was ready, I would have never done it. So I'm thankful. But that's
well,
how that
I am
happened.
so glad that it worked out for you the way that
Yes.
it did. Obviously, not that you lost your job, and it sounds like it was unexpected and you didn't have a lot of time to prep. So you spent the weekend feeling the feelings, and then you took action. And look at you now, 2 years later. So fill us in, let the audience know where your practice is at. It sounds like you are in a growth phase.
I am, yes. I'm actually in a very small town that I'm confident you've never heard of, Farmerville, Louisiana. If you know the show Duck Dynasty, okay, West Monroe is about 30 minutes away, so that's literally the only thing that can tell you where I am. It's close to the Arkansas line.
Okay.
It's right now, it's just me. I'm the only provider. I have my office manager, Tori, who kind of wears several hats. She does a lot of the patient contact, the just any, I mean, she does so much. We're so thankful for her. But,
Yeah.
and we, so I'm sorry, I forgot what the rest of your question
Well, your
was.
growth phase, we were chatting before we started recording about how you're at this point where you're deciding, where do I go from here? Because it sounds like things are
Oh,
busy.
yes. So I'll start by saying that I vastly underestimated the time it would take to get going and being self-sufficient. I told my husband I was in a panic state, and I was trying to really just get him on board with the whole private practice thing, because I knew I didn't want to go work for someone else. I knew that this is my chance. I'm going to go for it, you know. And so I told him, just give me 6 months and we will be good. And looking back now, I'm like, wish I hadn't have said that, because it's been almost 2 years. And this summer, you know, and I should have known, because I've heard several doctors, nurse practitioners, clinicians say that, you know, it takes about 2 years to get a private practice going, even if you have a little bit of a client load going in, which I had several patients that contacted me, followed me to my new place. It still takes time just to do all of that, because not only are you seeing patients, you're learning to run a business and running that business and troubleshooting and backstepping and all this stuff. So we're just now getting to where I am, you know, above water, you know, floating, comfortable, bringing in money, not just money to
Yeah.
pay the bills. Um, and the credentialing process took forever. I tried to do that myself. Wish I had hired someone to do it. It was tough. And so now I'm the only psychiatric provider in this little town. And I haven't done much advertising, because you know, everybody kind of knows each other, and you know, some people know me. I've been working in the medical field for 12 years maybe. So,
Hmm.
but now we're getting, like, in fact, Tori came up to me yesterday and she was like, I'm not saying you need to hire someone else, but I'm just saying the phone rings like once every 2 minutes. I was like, okay, well, we'll talk about that. So we are at the end
Wow.
of one chapter, and gonna have to sit down and kind of do some, you know, look at the workflow, look at what we need to do, because I mean, we're getting, you know, referrals and new patients coming in, and it's a blessing. It's a huge blessing, and I'm very, very thankful for everything that's happened along the way. So it's been a journey, and that's where we're headed right now.
Well, it's very exciting. I
Yes,
am thrilled that you stuck with it and that you are reaping the benefits of all of your hard work. I appreciate what you said about the reality of business. We can be very overly idealistic and optimistic when we start our
absolutely.
practices. There are
Yes,
people out there that make it look so easy. You just put up
yes,
that shingle and off you go. And it sounds like you can really appreciate a lot of what goes on behind the scenes. So if you're an insurance-based practice, the credentialing process, but you're also speaking to marketing and getting the word out there. It's a workflow. So it's
yes,
finding that right-hand person that's going to help you with a lot of the administrative tasks. Then there's the financial component, getting to a place where, unfortunately, with our businesses, there's not a lot of overhead. There's some expense, but when you start
exactly.
out, but then to generate money and start to get that reimbursement, and like you said, get to that point where you're beyond just paying the bills and you're able to
Right.
profit. And so it sounds like you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. The
I am.
phone is ringing off the hook.
Yes.
So when Tori came to you with that, what was your initial reaction to this prospect of expanding?
Um, kind of panicked because I'm like, wait a minute, I want to be in control. I want to know what's going on. But at the same time, like, no, be thankful. This is what you would want. This is what your goal is. So,
Yeah.
I was happy, and she always comes to me in a positive way. She's like, so, it's almost like I have a problem, but it's a good problem kind of thing. So I appreciate that about her.
Absolutely.
Because we
Remind me,
know each
what Enneagram
other.
type is she?
She's a 6. So we can really stress each other out with all of our fears combined. We can really think up some worst case scenarios. So,
Yeah.
but we
Well,
work
with
together.
several Enneagram sixes on
Yes.
my team, I can say that I now really appreciate having those people that can keep you rooted in reality and that can remind you that things are not always going to be perfect. And it is helpful to look at the big picture and look a little bit down the road and make sure that you've checked enough boxes to be able to take a step forward. But you also spoke to how you probably could have gotten paralyzed by perfection. And instead, you got to a point where I need to put one foot in front of the other and make some sort of a move, because if I don't now, I never will. And I wonder if hiring is going to be similar for you.
I have a feeling that that's where I'm going to end up because we've been struggling like to get to, I was talking to a local therapist slash business owner, and we were talking about collaborating on some projects, and I was telling her how this was probably about a year ago, and I was speaking to her about how I was like, I just didn't know that in private practice there's every day. And she goes, yeah, every day is a new she just did this. I was like, exactly, a new crisis. Like, I didn't know this was a thing, but now I have to take care of this, and I have to have time off from seeing patients to do those things, which is going to affect the revenue. And so you just have to navigate all that. And so it's been a journey, but I'm excited to see where it goes. Hiring is I look forward to the day when I can hire another provider, and I'm interested to see how that will go. So,
Yeah, well, this is something that I am in the throes of right now. So we just hired our 17th clinician and we are actively
wow.
interviewing. We have 3 prospects. So we could be a practice of 20 in a matter of days. And I say that just to make it clear, it is absolutely possible. This was in a 2-year time frame. So you had
Okay.
mentioned that most people are saying it takes about 2 years, and I think back, so I started the practice solo part-time. 2 years after that, felt comfortable to leave my primary job and be in private practice full-time solo. And
Okay.
then I hired May 2021 my first clinician, my first employee, and it took about 2 years to get to this point and really feel like, okay, we need a leadership team now. And it shouldn't just be me making all of the decisions and making sure that everything gets taken care of. And so that time frame is not that far off. But what I can say is that you definitely seem to have taken the time that you needed to get all the kinks worked out, to work on some of those things that we in our profession don't get specific training on.
We do not.
Marketing is not something that always comes naturally,
Absolutely. It
right?
does
The
not come
business and
naturally to
managing the
me.
finances.
Yes. And I was
No,
listening to
I
another of
totally
your,
agree. And so,
sorry, go ahead.
no, you were saying you were listening to another.
I was listening to another one of your podcasts, and somebody said something, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is just like, we don't get trained in grad school on how to something. And I was like, oh, that's so true for so many things, credentialing, marketing, running a business, how to even start a business. There are things that it's like you're constantly like, okay, am I doing everything legal, or is there another issue out there that I have no knowledge of, that there's nobody to teach me it? I just have to find out. And so for a while that was a fear. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's
And
it's a
then
whole
let's
world.
add to that whole list that you just recited, being a boss. So those are things
Yes.
that if we weren't in a position previously of leadership, we're also learning how to be bosses. And
Exactly.
so then you throw in all of these other unpredictable things that happen, and I appreciate you speaking to like the legality and ethics, and that's at the core of who we are in our enneagram. We're rule followers, we're reformers. We want to make things better, and we're always looking for improvement and evolution, and so those things are
Yes.
really important to us. And you're right, there isn't this clear cut answer for everything. And it
Right.
is so important to build up that team of who your go-to is for each aspect of the business. So we have our accountant, we have our financial advisor, we have our attorney. And
Yeah.
so we actually have two different attorneys. So one really specializes in the risk management component. So that's reviewing our consent forms, and that is reviewing our contracts. And then we have an employment attorney who reviewed our manual. And if I have questions around paid time off and sick time, and what are the criteria in my state that I have to make sure that I'm upholding as an employer. And so I think so much of it is building up that team of professionals that you can go to when you have questions.
You're
And then from
exactly right.
there, yeah, it's like everything systemically within your practice. So have you started that process of, I'm sure you got your go-to people.
I do, and thankfully, one good thing I can say about the community that I worked in previously is the networking. You know, we had a lot of different specialists, a lot of nurses, nurse practitioners, therapists, just administration, HR, you know, there basically you name it, there was a job there for that person. And so, you know, I remained friends with some of those people. And that might be a Southern thing. We're friends. We're not just coworkers. We're friends. So much friendliness going around here. So I was actually speaking to one of my old coworkers on the phone before we got on here, and
Mm-hmm.
just about it, like, hey, I have this patient that really needs this, and I know that you know everybody in a 180-mile radius. Who do you have for me? And she started listing off names. So anyway, just going back to just having that support
Mm-hmm.
is so crucial. It not crucial. I will say it is a blessing. It is something that really gives you, the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can connect you with maybe people that you're not aware that you need, like the legal team, I mean, I know everybody has to have an accountant, but I found my
Mm-hmm.
accountant through another professional that I met, through a previous job. So it definitely helps, and it does take a long time. It is a big learning curve.
It is. And I think the peace of mind that you have, where we've got the clinical side down, we are learning the business side, and then knowing who those go-to people are for those areas that are outside of our expertise. We're never going to have the knowledge that an attorney does. I'm not planning to go to law school. The same thing with my accountant, right? Like those, the bookkeeping, we're able to do it, but eventually we get to a point where we don't have to. The
Right.
administrative side, we bootstrap and we wear the hats. I'm so happy to hear that you found someone early on that seems like such a great match for you, that is able to take on a lot of those tasks. And that's something I encourage to all my consulting clients as soon as you can, because even as a solo practitioner, there is so much to keep that person busy. Would you
Oh,
agree?
absolutely. Absolutely. I have to go to her and say,
Yeah.
okay, on a scale of 0 to 10, how overwhelmed are you right now? Because I always fear that she's not going to tell me that she's got too much on her plate. And she's like, no, it's okay. It's okay. And so, there's extremely, because I'm sitting in here seeing patients and doing my administrative work, and then, I might have no clue what's going on out there, but I walk out there and she's like, oh my Lord, the phones have just been ringing off the hook. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So,
Well, the
um,
piece that you're speaking to is, and I think most clinicians in solo practice can relate to this, where if you're in session, I mean, we are tied up for that clinical hour. And
Right.
so we're not able to come up for air until that session is over, and we still have to document. And
Right.
so we could very likely be missing phone calls, potential referrals. There'll be some collateral communication that we have to do. So very different than maybe a salaried position working somewhere else. There isn't time factored in for that. And we have a cap. So I'm sure that you are getting close to what yours is as far as how many patients you should be seeing in any given day or any given week. And we can feel stretched so thin when you're building those relationships in the community. You're in a small town, you're one of the only providers, and so I'm sure it's really hard to say no. How are you navigating this volume of calls right now and this level of need? Are you keeping a waiting list?
Well, one thing that we actually spoke about yesterday is using we have an app. It's called Spruce. I don't know if I can say that, but anyway, it's
Yeah, please do. I've heard
okay.
great things about Spruce.
I love Spruce. I'm trying to get to where, so when she said, the phone, a lot of people call because, they're coming from out of town and they're like, okay, how do I get to the office again? A lot of them are, maybe they're not familiar with the area, maybe they're not tech savvy, so it's directions to get here. It's, okay, I lost the paperwork, or I don't know, I'm just saying, little things, or what are your hours, or what, so coming up with the phone tree within Spruce so that I can cut down on the number of times the phone rings, because a lot of those questions can be answered with a directory on there, which we, are still in, like you said, in diapers. We're still getting to where we're getting the everything managed in a nice workflow. So I'm gonna work on some recordings and get that uploaded into the app so that when they call, it has a button to push for the information, and that's a call that doesn't necessarily have to be answered, and so it frees up the phone lines for people who need to speak to someone about an appointment or a question or a medication refill or something like that. And we have implemented a waiting list. Our software, actually, we've figured out how to use the software for a waiting list to, rather than the way we used to do it is have it written down. But in our EMR system, there is a wait list, and we can, if we have a cancellation, we can just pull that wait list and say, okay, this person is the next in line, call them. That cuts down on, or it, maximizes the number of hours in the day that I'm actually seeing patients, and in turn am able to bring in revenue for that time that we're here. Same thing with no-shows. We like to follow up and have people that, they may have an appointment 2 weeks out, but they would like to get in sooner. We have that waiting list. As soon as there's a cancellation, we call that person and, get in. If there's lots of no-shows, we contact that person and kind of remind them of the no-show policy, but also see what are some barriers, to you getting on the visit or getting to the clinic. Is there anything we need to do differently to serve you so that you can get to your appointment? And that just made some little tweaks here and there to where we can cut down on no-shows, and just kind of streamline everything else. And I think that is going to really make a difference here in the next few weeks.
It sounds like it. So you're working out a lot of the kinks. You're using your technology to your advantage. And it also sounds like you are pinpointing maybe some areas that could use some improvement. But there are some things that obviously you can do that are within your control that might help to minimize some of the questions, some of the call volume, and some of the missed appointments.
Yes.
That's great. Yeah, with the phone tree, it's making me think of when you call any doctor's office and you can get the directions to the location or the fax number, or if this is a refill versus I need to speak to someone right away. Such a great way to triage.
Yes. Yeah. Phone triage
Makes
is
a lot of sense.
good term for it. So
Yeah, for
hopefully,
sure. So I'm happy to hear that all of that is getting worked out, and I'm sure that that'll decrease obviously some volume, but some stress. So I have to ask, we talk a lot on here about work-life balance and knowing that you have a newer baby girl at home and
yes,
obviously
I
your other
do.
children and your family. How are you navigating all that is this balance between personal and professional life?
Oh man. Well, I will say it's easier now that I work for myself because if I need to take a day off, I can take a day off.
Yeah.
I currently see patients
Hmm.
3 days a week, and 2 days a week I do admin or my admin days. At least one of those days is completely devoted to work, administrative work.
Hmm.
The other day may or may not be devoted to work. Like today, we had orientation at my children's school where we go drop the supplies off, figure out where the classrooms are, fill out the forms, all that. So today was my admin day, so I went and did that. I spent about 2 hours there getting, filling out the bus information, the meal, they have a new meal system, picking up yearbook, filling out forms, um, meeting the teachers, and that took about 2 hours that otherwise, like, I would have had to take away from my family time to do that. But I just did it while my kids were in. Like, the way I have it set is my kids, they're in care of family or a sitter Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4. So that's set anyway.
Hmm.
So I dedicate part of that time to taking care of other things. And then I also went and got new uniform shirts. For my daughter who needs, another size, and what I did a couple other things, just running little errands that, I don't have to take the kids to do, so that once we're home at night,
Oh,
we're home, and I'm
hmm.
not, turning into this crazy mother like, we've got to get here, we've got to get here. And so it helps. So
Hmm. So, productive day, and you have that designated time throughout the week that you have been conscientious about how you spend it. And I
yes.
love that you have that kind of line of demarcation where it's like once 4 o'clock hits, it's family time. So I'm going to get everything done in that window. And sounds like you're doing the juggling act like the rest of us, but you've got some boundaries and some limits worked in there that seem to be effective. How is the balance feeling? I mean, we're heading into the school year and a new phase.
Yes, there's always it's just this like tense energy this time of year where you're like, okay, you're excited because, new school year, new stuff, new
Yeah.
teachers, new learning, new schedule, but then it's kind of also like the deer in the headlights, like, oh Lord, it's coming. So we
Right? Let's brace ourselves.
yes, because right now I get to sleep a
Hmm.
little later because I have great family. My mom and my aunt they come to me to keep the kids, so I don't have to wake up and take them somewhere, So I get to sleep a little later, but the time is coming where I'm gonna have to get back up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. Um,
Oh,
so
yep,
that's
I can relate for sure. So, just a
mhm.
new phase, new adjustment, but it seems like you've got some good things in place to prepare you for that.
Yes,
So,
yes.
that's wonderful. Well, I would love to have you share some tips or some things that you've learned that have been really helpful throughout your journey. I mean, our audience is a wide range, but
Mhm.
I would say that there will definitely be some listeners who might be considering starting a practice, not sure if it's for them, questioning if they can handle the business side. That can feel really overwhelming when it's not something that we've had experience in. And then that whole idea of being a boss and managing a team.
Mhm.
What would you say are some of the biggest takeaways that you've had from these last 2 years?
I would say the number one thing is that you can absolutely do it. There is no specific type of person that you have to be a business owner. You don't have to be
Yeah.
extremely intelligent. You don't have to know, you don't have to have a great, huge network of people behind you. You don't have to have money. I didn't have money. We had some stuff going on. We didn't have a lot of money saved.
Yeah.
You can just go for it. Start researching. If you can prepare ahead, like I wasn't able to, more power, because then, it's a little less pressure. Luckily, I have a great husband who's been super, super supportive and has just been really a trooper of being the breadwinner, not the breadwinner, but the sole provider for us for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
He's amazing. And he's been so supportive in this journey. So, but just if it's something you want to do, the only thing you have to have is the endurance and the ability to go, like you said, go with the flow, roll with the punches, understand there's going to be setbacks. It's not going to happen overnight. It's probably not going to happen in 6 months. If I could tell myself that in the past, I would. But it is worth it, because with everything that's going on in the world right now, having something that's your own, that you can control, feels a lot better than depending on, someone else, another employer, family, business, whatever. So that's the main thing. Give yourself grace, because you're going to do a lot of things wrong, but that's the only way you learn. So that's especially hard for us, as type 1s. We don't want to do anything wrong. We want to be right. We don't want to make mistakes. We think we're terrible if we make mistakes. So that's been good for me as well. So learning that,
Yes.
I've made a lot of mistakes, so might as well just accept it. I think if you can get those two things down, then you can do it. And it is so worth it. It is extremely worth it. So
I could not agree more with all of that. And I haven't heard anyone yet use that word, and that was perfect. Endurance. It's, if anything is worthwhile, you have to love it and be passionate enough about it that you're going to persevere in spite of these challenges. And if you can stick with it through those tough times, you get out on the other end. And not to say that things aren't going to all of a sudden stop happening,
right.
but that you are better at weathering that storm. You can anticipate more of what's coming, and you kind of bob and weave, and you've got your go-to people, and you can delegate more as time goes on. So I really appreciate that. And you were also speaking to how beautiful it can be, where one of our biggest challenges as the Enneagram ones that we are is handling those situations when we make mistakes. And I can tell that you're probably in this camp too, where we learn to embrace it. We can learn to embrace it.
Yes.
And it's not the end of the world. It normalizes our experience and those of others. We can relate better to our patients. We can relate better to
Yes.
the team that you're going to build. We relate better to other humans. And I can also say that in my experience, my rebound rate is so much faster. A mistake
Yes.
that I would make that would last for days and feel like it would ruin me.
Yes.
I can dust myself off. I feel the feelings like you described in the beginning,
Yes.
and then I come back with a vengeance. Have you noticed the same?
Yes, I have. And my husband has noticed that. He made it like a few weeks ago or a few months ago, with the baby, you lose time. But he said, wow, I'm really proud of how you're handling whatever the situation was. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, usually that would get you down for like a week, that one little thing. And now you're like back to doing,
You bounce back.
Like the
Well,
next
that's why it's so important that you've got the people that you do in your life, because they check us. And we're
he
just,
does. He's honest.
we're like head down, and we're doing what we need to do. We don't always realize the progress we're making. So
That
I'm
is
grateful
so
that you
true.
have him to
That
remind you.
is so true.
Yep. Well, this was such a pleasure. I could not be happier for where you are in your journey. I am excited to stay tuned and follow along. So plug your business. What is the best way for people to find you and follow along, as well, as it sounds like you're going to continue to expand and you're probably going to be hiring soon?
Yes, that is true. Okay, so I do have, I'm on Facebook, Laura E. Bates Psychiatry in Louisiana. And my website is lauraebatespsych.com.
And we'll include all of that in the notes, so it's really easy for people to find.
Yes. And those are the main two ways. Email address, email me. It's just Laura at laurabatespsych.com. And that's pretty much it. I'm not real big on LinkedIn right now or anything like that. So,
Yeah. You found the ones that work.
yeah.
All right. I love it. Well, I am going to stay along for the journey. Thank you so much for your time today. And we're all going to follow along.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.